Okay, hi. So this is the Drupal usability meeting for January 16th, 2018. And we are in commit freeze for the alpha, and we are looking at stuff that may still need to be fixed once we are out of commit freeze for things that are kind of important for this release. And Benji was working on some migrate UI improvements. You want to get started on that?
Sure. So I pasted the issue into the chat. The number is 2922701. And it's really just some interface text that I was helping to wordsmith. I suppose I should share my screen, shouldn't I? I can remember how to do that. There we go. And I am screen sharing. So, oh, except I'm sharing the wrong screen. I'm confused as to which is screen 1 and which is screen 2. There we go. So when doing a migrate from Drupal 6 or Drupal 7 through the user interface, this is what it used to look like. The page title was Upgrade Analysis Report. It's already by this point adopting the design that we got from the status page and using terminology of missing or available upgrade paths. And that's been changed to talking about modules will be upgraded or will not be upgraded. And the proposed change, the title was pre-upgrade analysis. And I suggested some other possibilities for the page title, and I think the current patch uses a question, what will be upgraded? And the other change was that, maybe I can open this screenshot so make it a little easier to read. The other thing I suggested was expanding this text. So on the parts that won't be upgraded, I felt this was misleading, that it's not a question of the modules being upgraded, but whether the content and configuration associated with those modules will be upgraded. And I think, yeah, down here near the bottom is the current text we've settled on. So I think that the person actually doing the work, Client 1, and I were pretty much in agreement that this was an improvement. I'm sorry, this is not the text we agreed on. Where is up here is the text we agreed on. So there are no modules installed on your new site to replace these modules. If you proceed with the upgrade now, configuration and/or content needed by these modules will not be available on your new site. For more information, with a couple of links to the handbook. So I guess the question is, well, does this need further review, or is my review enough? And then in the issue summary, one of the proposed tasks was number 2, to provide information via hook help instead of links to the handbook. So we've already provided some more information on the page, but we're still using links to the handbook. And is that an important thing for this issue? Is that something that can be pushed to a follow-up? Is that something we can just forget about? So I guess that's really where I need advice. And I think XJM posted on comment 14. And later. Well, I guess it's really just in the issue summary that that this was recommended. So this issue summary comes out of some meeting of the Migrate team. Opinions?
No objections?
Oh, go ahead, Roland.
No, just wanted to say no objections from me. Like, looks okay. Looks nice.
Benji, is this the last blocker to getting that module stable?
It might be. I think Lucas Hedden posted about it in the UX channel asking for review maybe on Friday.
Okay.
And he may have said so.
I think that, so this is from Migrate UI. I think the last blocker is the adding back the incremental migrations through the UI, which is critical.
Is that still a blocker? Okay.
Yeah, it's critical. So I believe that would be the last one.
All right.
But this was raised in the critical that got fixed, the handling the modules sources that do not need a library path, which was a lot of misleading errors on the page that made it look like it's not doing a lot of things it should, while it was not doing a lot of things that it should not do.
Just looking at this issue, right?
Yeah, well, it was last Friday. He did not describe it as the last blocker or anything like that.
Yeah, sorry. Last Friday we were scrambling to try and get the features in for alpha. So
Yeah, I just scrolled past a long discussion of what to post on Twitter. So yeah.
say that again.
To understand a little bit more, it is just changing the text and the icons and adding this help text, right? It's only this change, or maybe I'm missing something because I was trying to follow and I just got a little bit lost.
I'm sorry. The sort of the remaining question on this issue is whether it's important to do this thing that was proposed in the issue summary. And instead of linking to the documentation guide on Drupal.org, provide information on the internal help page. So is it important?
Who made that suggestion? Because that seems like an odd suggestion.
I'm
not necessarily arguing with it. I just am like, we definitely do elsewhere where something's going to take a tremendous amount of text to describe what to do. Link to external documentation that can always be up to date. Is the concern though that there's not enough meat on this page to like you get a big ass status report, but there's not enough context to tell you what you're looking at and what you're supposed to do? But I see there is some text up there. So I'm trying to figure out which comment asked for that and why. I wish Drupal revision had a blame, like a git blame feature.
If you want, I can look at revisions for this issue. I think. Yeah, you agree.
Well, we don't need to get too into it. I was just wondering if you're familiar with the issue, if you knew who raised that concern and why.
I'm not. I only started looking at this issue on Friday or Saturday.
What kind of message would be there, for example? I'm trying to imagine what I would expect to see on the page. I mean, is it going to be a long text or? Yeah, I'm a little bit lost, probably.
So the current proposal, well, the before screenshot showed the following items will not be upgraded, and for more information, there's a link to the handbook page. And then if you'll give me a moment to scroll down near the bottom, this is the proposed text. It's somewhat longer, somewhat more accurate.
Okay. Sorry. No, I get it now.
You proceed.
So I think that's an improvement.
Yeah, and strings we can always change right up until release candidate, so I'm not too worried about that. The only thing I can think of is that second bullet, or whatever bullet it was in the issue summary, is maybe referring to how that text gets there. Like if that text is just like appended to some form element on the page, that's not great. But if it were to be inserted by a hook help, then that's sort of the general mechanism we have for like put contextual information at the top of this form, you know. That's the only thing I can think of that they're objecting to there, because I don't think there's any problem at all with adding links to supplementary information.
Okay.
And the text that's there here, I mean, it is long and wordy or whatever, but it's not like a commit blocking concern for me, because if we want, we could always file. Now, I'm not Yoroi, right? Yoroi's whole shtick is like, we need to use fewer words everywhere. But for me, that's not a problem, because we still have up until like whatever, mid-February or something to to tweak the text more.
Okay, well, I suspect that you're right, and that is what was meant by that point in the issue summary, and I just didn't know that. And
okay, that's what they're saying. That makes sense, because that would be like a we're not using APIs properly problem. So that would make sense to fix.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I will follow up on this, and hopefully we'll get the patch updated soon.
Cool. One other thing that just might help is making the issue summary up to date with like, so you don't have to go to comment number 35 to know like what the proposal is. So maybe just like an issue summary update. It doesn't need to be now, but like when it gets time, when this is heading towards RTBC, it would be super helpful if what you just presented was what was actually in the summary. Like this is change this to this and that to that and whatever. You know what I mean? Like that would be helpful. Because even having you here to ask questions, like I think a couple of us got a little turned around. So if the issue summary just laid it all out what we're doing, that would help speed up the review process.
Right.
So the workflow issue, I'm using Simply Test, and I tried to apply a patch, and it didn't give me an error. So I don't know if that means it worked or not.
That's great. I haven't been able to do that.
However, my site is not installed yet, so I'm not quite ready to demo if somebody else does something else.
Yeah, I was trying to do that with the incremental migrations one, which has a very minor UI change, but it would be nice to see it in place because the code is not very self-explanatory. It's like adding one single button and changing some help text, and that's it.
Oh, well, that's easy enough, but there's no screenshots to review?
No.
What's that issue?
2687843. That's the
Since
remaining.
I'm still screen sharing, I've opened that up.
Yeah, that's the remaining blocker for Migrate UI. They have it before a screenshot. Basically says Suzu already upgraded, so you're not allowed to do anything. And what it changes to, it says that you've already upgraded, If you want to clean up your stuff, then clean up your stuff and then come back. So there's no rollback supported, but if you want to do an incremental upgrade that you can do with the button. And then it makes the button work, and that's it.
Yeah, there must be something goofy with the patch because I'm getting an error occurred while patching the project on that one, but the workflow does not have it.
Interesting. Okay.
Maybe the patch no longer applies, or
I've heard from others they have issues applying patches, so maybe it's something. Yeah.
Here's where we need like Gilroy's like quick sketch. Anyway, so the new what used to be just a useless error is now what again?
So it used to be a useless error saying an upgrade has already been performed on this site. Yeah. To perform a new migration, create a clean and empty new install of Drupal 8. That text remains, and then it says rollbacks are not yet supported through the user interface. For more information, see the upgrading handbook. So it still says that rollbacks are not supported. So the only change there is instead of rollbacks and incremental migrations are not yet supported, it says rollbacks are not yet supported. So it basically says that we will support rollbacks sometime. And then it adds a button that says import new configuration and content from old site. That's the button. That's on the same page.
That's the text or the button?
That's the text of the button. Yes, it's a long button.
Long button. Okay.
And it's a primary button, so it's going to be a blue button. So the screenshot would be a slightly shorter text and a blue button. And you would click it, and then...
I think that's the critical thing. Then what happens after that?
Yeah, that's why I was trying to apply the patch.
Hey, Benji, you have a local, right? Like a non-simply test me dev environment?
Yes.
Could you try applying this patch and see if you can get it to work? Nothing like putting you on the spot after you're like, hey, you know that thing you came here for? We're going to get you over.
Actually, it'll take me a few minutes to get anything running, let alone applying a patch. I guess applying the patch is not the right
part. We can do that in the conference room.
Right, so I can work on that, but you don't want to wait for me.
All right, I did have this. I don't know what I'm demoing, but I can try. Window.
Should I release the screen share?
All right, you see this thing structure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, the issue here is where'd it go? Modals, blah blah blah. Is this one here 2830584? Oh, come on now. Boy, everything in the world is conspiring to make this meeting be very silly. Okay. For creating, updating, and deleting workflows.
Mm-hmm.
So presumably, I guess I should have set up a stock Drupal site. But presumably what this means is...
Instead of leading out to separate pages, it will open modals for stuff.
That is my... No, it's available. Oh yeah, okay. It's available content foundation. Okay. So edit. Yep, that's a modal, all right. Delete. Whoop. Delete. Whoop. Yep. Was there another one? Creating. Creating. Create. Add a new state. So, make a stock one, I guess, but I think it's pretty straightforward what's going on. So, in other words, I think it's a question of, do we want this interaction where it's like editing pops open a new thing, or do we want, say, this interaction where adding would take you to a separate page, editing would take you to a separate page, and deleting, you can't delete those roles, but editing. Yes, the ZERP role, as we all have in our. Because this is basically the same type of interaction. It's just with roles instead of workspaces. The workflows, right? I'm curious why this was rated for usability. Okay. Wow, 56 was. This is not close to RTBC. That's a very kind way of putting it. That's really not clear. Okay.
Yeah, I think we looked at it a few times.
Okay, well, I think that this issue has probably changed a few times. Because it looks like originally it was implement a unified workflow UI. That Boyan was saying this is not remotely RTBC. And then somehow it changed somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, that's what happened, yes. So we did this in June.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so that is literally all this patch is doing, is just adding.
I think I haven't looked recently, but now the title says modals, basically.
A lot of
so hopefully that's all it does.
That's a test. There's a new dialogue form trait. Forms in dialogue. So the only thing that worries me about this is that this is definitely not the only place we show this. So like if you go to views and edit something here, that one, whatever. I mean, we already do show forms and modals. So I'm curious why. Well, let's see what the rest of this patch does. Okay, so it's creating a dialogue form trait, like a generic thing that can be used to create dialogue. It's implementing it on the workflow form. I love how all the designer people are like, we came here to review screenshots. And I'm like, here, let's dive into some fucking code. Anyway, sorry about that. I just want to understand this. It's adding dialogues to add, delete, edit. But it seems like this is all constrained to the workflow module, which makes sense because that's what the patch says it's doing. But I guess I'm not sure why we need a whole new API. We're doing something that we already do. Core. I'm sure it's somewhere in this. So I guess pulling this back, from a usability perspective, I think what we need to decide is if the interaction difference between this, again, pretend this is workflow. Add, you get taken to a new page. edit and get taken to a new page. And when you delete, it gets taken to a new page. Because this is definitely the general pattern everywhere. Works that same way. Like I could have gone to the blocks page, same deal, you know, bigger, separate page, etc. So I think the question is, do we agree that the workflow page is better served by having the modal dialogues instead for these interaction patterns? So, boop, to boop, and finally, thoughts?
This is fine for me. It makes sense.
Yeah, in general, pop-ups are better, basically. So
Yeah, I don't know in mobile.
It makes sense, I think, because it's like these are very short forms. Like, were this like the node creation form or something, it would be unwieldy. But the longest one you have is you have an edit form. Wait, what that does look like in mobile.
Yeah, Roy's or Boyan's comment was more on the from to stuff in this form that they don't seem to be related, then it's not visually apparent what's going to happen there. But this issue was descoped from improving that, right? But yeah, then my comment on the issue in the summer was the same. It's like, if we agree that the modals are an improvement, then we should work on getting that in first and then work on the actual content of the modals. So we need to agree if that's an improvement.
What was his original proposal? Because this looks like the patch itself. There we go. So this is what he was originally proposing. So kind of like a view style overview.
We are not seeing what you are.
Oh shoot! No, you're not.
It's a different screen.
Sorry, it did do a different. Someone has to remind me that I'm sharing my whole desktop later, so I don't show you some work stuff or whatever. Okay, going back. This was the original thing that Jojo Toft had. This was shows the workflow things in a table, like an overview table. You click edit on one. You're taking a screen that looks basically like what we've got in Core right now. And then there's that in the modal. How do you use this program? Add. So anyway, this was the thing I think Boyan was concerned about. But it doesn't seem like it's doing anything, because I've been on this screen several times this week, and this looks the same to me as the screen normally looks. So I don't think it's doing anything to the actual workflow screen. I think it's just adding this dialogue tree. I guess my concern with going forward with this is, like, once we get this dialogue trait in, it seems like we need a plan for how to apply it more generally. Because I could totally see at least the roles UI benefiting from showing up in a modal. I don't know if the block UI makes as much sense, like picturing this entire form showing up in a modal with the little nested tabs and stuff. That seems kind of crazy. But I guess my only concern with this patch is that it would create an inconsistent user experience. Because really, right now, the only other forms that use dialogues are in views at the moment. and they are not permitted to use this trait. So then we could get into subtle interaction differences, like for example, so let's do workflows here, and let's do views here. Sorry if this is boring the crap out of anybody. This is just kind of how I review patches. Very scattershot. Edit. Okay, so like, whoop. Okay, so that's how views shows a dialog. And that's how this shows a dialog. They do look pretty similar. Okay, that's good. But yeah, I guess I just worry that things can get out of sync with each other. Like if we add some padding here and then don't add it there or whatever, that kind of stuff. So. But yeah. So I'm not sure what to post on this from a usability review point. I think I can say that we all think that using dialogues here makes sense. And, oops, not that issue. And that this issue seems to have changed around a lot and is no longer about the overall revamping of the workflow UI, which is weird. I don't know why we used the same issue like earlier in this issue where like, you know, posting screenshots of like, how did it go? It was like some crazy like graph thing. Where it went now. Ooh, there's a little GIF. That's so fancy. Haha, it's even called fancy state. That's funny. Okay. So I can say next team call today. It seems like this issue has gone in a few different directions. Then the result seems to only be adding a new dialog form trait. Utilizing it. Workflow.
So what we discussed in the summer, so I just read back my my comments there, is that if we want to have improvement to the forms and display them in modals, then it's better to decouple the two and just get the modals in first and then work on the improvements to the form. Because the improvements wouldn't work without the modals because the idea behind the modals is to have a mental model of you're editing this workflow as one thing. Yep. Like you're editing this view as one thing instead of piece by piece, right? And there was some discussion of entirely changing how the form is created, and in that case, the modals wouldn't help, right? So we were still in the place of deciding if we want to do a more holistic change or just refining the contents of the individual forms.
Okay. Is there an issue that was spun off for that exploration? Like, assuming modals gets in, then we're going to blah, blah, blah.
Let's see.
Related issues.
Possibly there. So there's a meta redesign the workflow config page to better visually describe the flow.
Oh yeah. Okay. What's that node again?
Which that has the crazy graph. So that's 2758623. Yep. So that has a crazy graph thing. That, by the way, Kevin O'Leary entirely implemented in CSS.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, look at that. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
That's pretty fucking badass, though.
Yeah. Yeah, he had it working entirely. But that issue talks about possibly changing how the form is structured, right? To make have inline subforms or whatever. So if you look at that issue that has like these vertical tabs and then inline subforms instead of modals. So if you do that, then jumping to modals first would be quite confusing because people are already used to having these separate pages for stuff, but then we change it to modals and then we change it back to same page, a different interaction.
I'll put like, however, slightly risky to do this only because we don't ultimately know where we'll end up, and we could be wrong. Get 8.5 has modals on this page. Times is 5 modals, and 8.6 goes back to its own page. How do we make that actionable? Like, are we saying we need a resolution to what the form is going to look like before we will do this basic step, or? I guess I worry about that, and I also worry about the inconsistency that could be with two different ways of doing modals. But I don't know the APIs enough to know if that's a real legit path. Because this is going to kill this issue for another 3 or 4 months. So I'm just trying to figure out what we want them to do in response to what we're saying. So I don't disagree with this objection at all, or this concern. But then, like, Gabor, what should we give them advice? So to combat this concern, blah, 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 blah. Like, what would blah, blah, blah mean?
Which concern? That's multiple concerns.
This concern. All right, the one that says, well, the one I just heard you say is that you're worried about that, like, between every 6 months, basically, we change the way this form works. And users were like, I thought I knew how this works, and now I don't anymore, and now it's something different, and I just retrain my users. Grr, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think that we need feedback from the team on whether they wanna continue on that path as well.
You mean the workflow team?
Yeah. Because so these are designs from Let me see if I don't think that Kevin designed these. Yeah, nobody says an issue who designed this. But I don't think Kevin designed them.
This thing?
I think it was Joseph. And Kevin prototyped it.
I don't know, the way in which Kevin's defending in here makes me think it's Kevin's. Okay, this.
No, the whole thing of putting on the page was Joseph, so that was comment 22. Yeah, so it's just a collaboration between Kevin and Joseph, basically.
Okay, and Boyan says, this looks really exciting. Great.
It is. It looks very cool. So they were making changes to make it more accessible and keyboard friendly, etc. So like putting in the checkbox and making the to-state look like a drop-down, etc.
I keep trying to remember this.
Yeah, so we need to figure out if the team still plans on moving forward with this change as well, because in that case, making the modals might not make sense. So that's what I commented in September in 44.
Or, okay.
So we don't know. Depends. They haven't answered that yet since September.
We would love feedback from the workflow team if that image is indeed the direction of the movie, because if so, it might not make sense to do this change now, or...
That's my thinking, yeah. If we change it back to that use models because we put them in line.
Okay. So I think I could still say this, though. There were no objections. So if we had a dialogue form trait that allowed you to make small tweaks to forms that all of a sudden they showed up in a dialogue, I'm hearing, or I think I heard, that that improvement is useful and people would like it. Correct? And then the main concern is not the introduction of the pattern, but the introduction pattern to this place, because if we end up making the form look like that, it might not make any sense to. How about this? Did that address your concern? So here, let me read this top to bottom because I know I've been talking about. Okay, we reviewed this on the UX team call today. It seems like this issue has gone in a few different directions, with the advice above being to get the modals in first, then work on other improvements to the form separately. And I put in parentheses this issue. It was the overall form improvements that number 56 was referring to, I believe, meaning Boyan's comments. I should say that. Okay, so the end result of this issue seems to only be adding a new dialog form trait and utilizing the workflows UI to put the add, edit, delete forms in a modal similar to how the views UI works. And then I put in parentheses, although the dialog form trait is applied to views as part of this patch, do we risk introducing inconsistency between the two? There were no objections from the UX team to utilizing this pattern. It makes sense, especially for short, simple forms like this. We should probably think about expanding it out to other places with short forms like roles and follow-up patches. However, as Gabor stated in number 44, it's slightly risky to do this, only because we don't ultimately know where that will end up spec-wise, and so we could end up ping-ponging users a bit, where 8.4 has forms on separate pages, 8.5 has them in modals, and 8.6 goes back to its own page again. So we would love feedback from the workflow team. if that image is indeed the direction they want to go in, because if so, it might not make sense to do this change here and instead introduce it to a different set of forms such as roles. Is that an accurate summary of everyone's feedback?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Dabo, are you cool with that?
Yep.
So I removed needs usability review because we did review it, and I guess if they need us to review something again, they can post it. Does that work for everyone?
Yeah.
Boy, that save button is far down. Okay, anyway. Cool, thanks everybody. Oop. Benji, did you happen to get that migrate UI one working in the meantime? Or incremental UI rollback, whatever it was called?
Turns out that the first step is to re-roll the patch.
Ah, okay. So that's why.
Also, I don't know how easy it is to demo something like that. I would need a D6 database to work from or something, wouldn't I?
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. Is there any quick way of like showing that, Gabor, or do you have to have a working D6 database?
Yeah, the trick is that you need to have a migration that you performed, because that's the only way you can show that the incremental migration UI, right?
Yes. Okay.
So that's true.
So how about we do this then? We go to that issue and we add a need screenshots tag, and we're like, we're very willing to review this in UX meeting. However, we couldn't get a demo up and running, so if someone could do that and take a screenshot of what the change is so we can review it properly or something like that.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because then at least we push that issue forward, even though we can't actually do it. So.
Yeah, they were not explicitly asking for feedback. I was more of like a precaution thing because it's a UI change and it's their last blocker issue for a UI module. And if we don't review it, then they would wait for another week at least, etc. You know.
So I'll update the issue and I'll add the needs reroll tag and the need screenshots.
Hey, thanks, Benji. That's great.
Welcome.
Okay. And we have 3 minutes left. Wow. Do you have anything else to talk about? I guess, Christina, do you have an update on Out of the Box? Like, I noticed that neither of those issues are they close?
I think right now, what most of the stuff that is blocking things are commits that that already have some reviews, and we have to fix these reviews. That's all I know for now.
So they've addressed all the review feedback so far, and they need more review feedback. Is that what you're saying?
No, that we need to address the reviews that we found.
Oh.
Yeah, we just got another one a few minutes ago. Yeah.
It's funny because you guys are at the perfect nexus point where it's like everybody's super excited about this feature, and so when you say like we need reviews, everyone's like, "Whoa," you know, and then you're like, "Wow."
We should have done that some weeks before, but
it's okay. Yeah, I mean, hey, anytime you get the feedback in, it's good, you know. So okay, cool. Well, yeah, a lot of us are very excited for that, but even if we don't get an 8.5 and it goes in 8.6, that's still gonna be a huge fucking win. But
and it will be even better.
Yeah, I do know that's waiting on product management feedback. So I was thinking on Thursday, assuming we're meeting on Thursday. I show us meeting on Thursday. So Dabo, at least, can you make that meeting on Thursday? Right now it shows so maybe we could do a final product management review on the profile on Thursday, so that's out of the way.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day. Go 8.5. Migrate team, workflow team, etc. Woo! Okay. We'll talk again next week.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.